Hello everyone. Today I am Sakti Gupta going to tell you about the C functions under the guidance of Mr. Mayank Arya. First of all, I want to tell you about the contents of this module. In this module, we will study about functions, advantages of functions, elements of function, syntax of all elements of function, types of function, that is library functions and user-defined functions, and types of user-defined functions. First of all, functions. Functions is a set of statements or a block of code that together perform any specific task. We cannot write any C program without using functions. So functions are the basic building block of a C program, or we can say functions are very necessary element of a C program. Set of statements of function is need to be written opening and closing curly braces. Every C program must have one function, that is main function, where the program has to begin its execution. Now, there are many advantages of function. One of the main advantage of function is it avoids rewriting same logic and code again and again. Because if we want to repeat same logic or code again and again, we just need to define it once and we can call it many number of times and at any place in a program. Because of program, a large C program can easily be tracked. And function also improves the readability of code. Due to function, the size of program also reduces. Now, elements of function. There are three elements of function, that is function declaration, function definition, and function calling. First of all, function declaration. Function declaration tells the compiler about the data type of returning value of function and the name of the function and parameters list. Syntax for function declaration is return type, then function name, then parameters list, and then semicolon. Now next element of function is function definition. In function definition, we need to write that code that is to be executed when the function is called. So syntax for function definition is return type, function name, and parameters list. And in opening and closing curly braces, we need to write the block of code or function body. First of all, return type. Return type is the data type of the returning value of the function. If function is not returning any value, then we need to write void. Function name is the name of the function. It is according to the comfort of user. Parameters list, in this we need to declare the variable which is passed as an input from called function to the calling function. The operation of function is performed on that input. Now function body. Here we need to write that code that is to be executed when the function is called. Next element of function is function calling. We declare the function, we define the function. For repeating the code of function again and again, we need to call the function. So for calling the function, syntax is function name and parameters list and then semicolon. Here we do not need to declare the list of parameters. We just need to type the name of that variable which is passed as an input from calling function to the called function. Now here is one example of the C program using functions. In this program we are printing the line. First of all, we are declaring the function which is not returning any value, so we need to write void and the name of the function is println and no parameters are passed from the called function to the calling function. In the main function we are calling this function, so we just need to write the name of the function, and because there are no parameters, so we do not need to write anything. When here main function, in main function println function is called, the code of println function will execute. Now after the code of println function, the control of program again returns to the main function. Now, types of function. There are two types of function, that is library function and user-defined functions. First of all, library functions. Library functions are also known as built-in function or predefined function. Library functions are already defined in C language. We just need to call it. Library functions are placed in a common place which is known as library. For using library function, we need to include header files. Some of the example of header files are std.h and conio.h. And some of the examples of library functions are clr, and getch. Now, user-defined functions are the functions which are defined according to the need of user. User-defined functions are also called like the built-in function at any place in the C program. Now, types of user-defined function. There are four types of user-defined function, that is function without arguments and without return values, function with arguments and without return values, function without argument and with return values, and function with argument and with return values. First of all, function without argument and without return value. In this type of function, no input is given from the calling function to the called function, and no output is given from the called function to the calling function. Means no data transfer between calling function and called function. Simply in this figure we can see when function 1 is calling function 2, simply the control of program goes to the function 2, and after executing the code of function 2, the control of program again returns back to the function 1. Now there is one example of function without argument and without return value. In this program we are calculating the area of circle. First of all we are declaring the function which is not returning any value, so we need to write void, and the name of the function is area, and no parameters are passed, so we are not writing anything, and then semicolon. In main function we are calling area function. When area function is called, the control of program goes to the area function, and the code of area function will execute, and the control of program again returns back to the main function. Now next type of user defined function is function with arguments and without return value. In this type of function, values as an input are passed from the calling function to the called function, but called function does not give any output to the calling function. In this figure we can see when function 1 call function 2, the value of argument is given a, means a is passed as an input. So the operation of function 2 is performed on the value of a, and after executing the code of function 2, the control of program again returns back to the function 1. Here is one example of function with argument and without return value. In this program we are calculating the area of circle. Because function is not returning any value, so we need to write void, and the name of function is area, and we are passing the value of r as an parameter, so we need to declare that variable in parameters list. Here we are declaring that variable, and in main function we are calling the area function, and the value of r is given as an input to the area function. So when the control of program goes to the area function, then value of r is served as an input to that function. Then the code of area function will execute, and after executing the code of area function is not returning any value to the main function. So simply the control of program returns back to the main function. Now next type of user defined function is function without argument and with return value. And in this type of function there is no arguments are passed. but after performing the task of function, values are returned. So in this figure we can see function 1 is calling function 2, but function 1 is not giving any input to the function 2. So the control of program simply goes to the function 2, and after performing the code of function 2, the value is returned to the function 1. Now there is one example of function without argument and with return value. In this, because function is returning a value, so we need to write the data type of that value. The data type of that value is float, and the name of function is area, and because there is no parameter passed, so we do not need to write anything, and then semicolon. In main function we are calling area function. When the area function is called, the control of program goes to the area function and the code of area function will execute. And after executing the code of area function is returning the value of a to the main function. So the value of a in the main function is stored in the another variable, that variable is c. So when area function returns value of a, main function stored that value in other variable, that is c variable, and the and that value of c we are printing in next line. Now next type, function with argument and with return value. In this type of function, input is given from the calling function to the called function, and output is returned from the called function to the calling function. Means there is two-way communication between calling function and call function. Now there is one example of function with argument and with return value. In this program we are calculating the area of circle. First of all, we are declaring the function. For declaring the function, because function is returning value and that value is of float type, we need to write float, and the name of the function is area. And because the value of r is given as an input from the main function to the area function, so we need to declare that variable here. In the main function we are calling the area function. When the area function is called, the control of program goes to the area function and the code of area function will execute. And after executing the code of area function is giving output to the main function, is returning value to the main function. So the value that is returning area function is stored in variable c. So in next line we are printing the value that is returned by the area function.